It is indeed a pleasure to have this privilege to play here for you. We intend to give you a very fine program, so just settle back, relax, and enjoy the moment.
I look all shiny. That is no makeup. I know I'm late. I'm only late because Streamlabs just threw me a curveball. But I'm also a little late because mentally I wasn't sure whether or not I was gonna hop on and do a live stream, but there's something in me that is like, just do one, because I had something I wanted to say, or at least have recorded. And so what I plan to do, fingers crossed, because me and trying out new routines go hand in hand. I'm always trying a new routine. What I'm trying to do is record this, make it like a tight 1 hour stream, and then perhaps convert this to a podcast episode. Only because, good morning, Justin, one of my ride or dies. I don't expect, and that's the thing too, I was going to take the day off because maybe like many people who tune in before work, tune into this live stream either on Twitch or on Facebook, primarily. Maybe like some of y'all, I'm off today, and today I wanted to dedicate to some other side projects that I have. And so to me, it wasn't even about like having a bunch of people flock and watch. I wanted this to just stay someplace and be available someplace so that folks could reference it later. Make sure my mic is on. Good morning. Good morning, Robin on Facebook. Let me, so what I want, turn down the volume. What I wanted to do today with the live stream is talk about the significance of the July 4th holiday. Me personally, I have a personal connection to the July 4th holiday. My late grandfather, July Gadsden, was born in July 4th, of course, of 1907. And so yesterday, my dad's side, this is my dad's dad, July Gadsden. But yesterday, our family had a cookout, and around the carport and in the yard were all these birthday decorations, and we just really wanted to lift up my dad and his siblings wanted to lift up the memory of their dad, and they shared a bunch, y'all. They shared so many stories that we've never heard. So all my cousins and my little tiny cousins and a whole bunch of folks, so we're just all here listening to these amazing stories about our grandfather, our grandma, my paternal grandmother. Not only that, we learned more about our roots and how we believe that we thought that our roots started at Edisto. We couldn't really trace it back further than Edisto, but another older cousin mentioned some conversations with other older relatives who have since gone on, and we may be from the West Indies, and so it was just like an emotional and awesome. Good morning, Robin, on Facebook if you're still watching. It was an emotional and an amazing July 4th for me, and I think that. Thanks, Justin. I think that's what, for me, it's always been about like my grandpa. We didn't always celebrate it, like especially if I was in Jersey for the summer or in North Carolina for the summer with my mom's family. We didn't necessarily like celebrate like that. But my dad's side of the family has always done a cookout on July 4th because of my granddad. So that's just one personal connection for me. I like to start off with the personal, right? The other part of July 4th, y'all know this, right? I've been using Facebook. I've used the Instagram platform. I've used any type of social media tool I can get my hands on to really help folks connect Black history, Black contributions that have been erased, obscured, banished to obscurity, underreported by our local news outlets. I've always tried really hard to connect Black people and Black culture to the history, and the fact that our culture and our contributions are erased, it leads us to do this thing that I saw. This is where I get a little old lady-ish. This is where I get a little get off my lawn, kids, read a book. This is where and it's not beef. It's just like I'm just gonna collect those who participate in this, and there's no name on this. It's just I see this is a widespread issue. Because places like Charleston has done so well at erasing and removing Black connection to important times in history, because white supremacy works the way it does to like undermine or to downplay Black people's contributions in the founding of this country. How our labor, our exploited labor, built this country, built white wealth for folks, right? There's a reason why they don't show us images of us or show us or teach us about this history. It's to create distance. And I think that while we definitely need to talk about the violence on which this country was founded on, we definitely need to talk about indigenous genocide and the removal of indigenous communities from their land. We need to talk about that we're on looted land. We need to talk about Black enslaved Black or enslaved Africans were brought here to work this stolen land. We need to talk about that history. We need to talk about how Black people were not considered full human beings. Good morning, Kia. Full human beings, right? We were 3/5 men, not even women. I don't even think women were even in the discussion, right? We need to talk about how Black women have never been afforded bodily autonomy, and how modern day capitalism in this country was literally born through a Black woman's body. We need to talk about all of that and how that brings up feelings like, man, forget this country, man. I ain't got no love for the founding fathers. Oh, I'm all the way in on that, right? I'm all the way in on having these really, really tough, complicated feelings about the founding of this country. But what we cannot do in that I guess in that rush to oh, thank you, Robin. In that rush to name the harm that was caused to us, in that rush to pinpoint an area of pain in our shared history, what we can't do is erase us. And I think this reductive reflex, right, or this reflex to remain reductive in recounting our history, is going to be our detriment. And so over the past, I would say like 4 or 5 years, maybe more, maybe 6 years, I've grown really tired of the July 4th posts on Black Twitter that are like, July 4th didn't mean nothing to us because we were slaves. I'm so tired of that. It's only because I love history. It's not because I don't like my people. It's not because I don't get why we do that, right? Oh, July 4th don't mean nothing to us because we were slaves. No, actually, I'm gonna need y'all to whip out that library card, right? I'm gonna need you to whip out that library card, and I'm gonna need you to I need you to look at Black people's contributions to things like the American Revolution, which they don't even tell you. They don't even tell you that Black people were in the American Revolution, right? That there were Black patriots, right? And they don't tell you also how Black people helped the Union. Like we don't have enough material. There's a lot of books out there. There's a lot of great historians who do a great job and telling you that, hey, Black people were motivated by this, or Black people were motivated by this concept or this ideal to fight in the Union or fight for the American Revolution, right? There are all these different things, but we don't have a wealth of that information. It's not accessible. And so I think I understand how people arrive at the conclusion that we didn't have a connection to these wars or to the founding of this country, or the wars fought to either maintain civil war, to either maintain the Union, or to found this country, American Revolution, right? And I just think that's very dangerous, because we're doing what white supremacy wanted us to do. And that's why last week, if you can remember, if anyone watched last week and you saw me lift up the book Moral Contagion, right? The book that outlines how any free blacks who would come, like free black sailors who would come to Charleston, were automatically jailed because they didn't want the black enslaved population to see black freedom. They didn't want the enslaved population in Charleston to witness what it looked like to be a free black person, right? So if I tell you about moral contagion, about this is a literal law on the books, what makes you think that the erasure of your history isn't the same thing? They don't want you to see the significant impacts that we've made, thus creating this feeling that we're strangers here, we don't belong here, we're just stolen contraband, we're just that, right? And I'm trying to push us to dig a little deeper and to not remove our own humanity, because I do believe when you continuously arrive at the conclusion that the July 4th holiday and other holidays that lift up patriotism, I think what you're doing is now you're doing what white supremacy is, which always trying to do, which say you're othering yourself. And again, we can talk about that brutal history. Come on, y'all know my page, y'all know my content. What we shouldn't do is completely to just like, oh well, we wasn't free. So we have changed that. 2015 academics, shout out to all the historians about this on YouTube or at the library, but we're still not doing it with Veterans Day. We're not doing it with other holidays. And I'm not with the whole imperialism, I understand too, military and all that, but I just want to say that you can't just say black people don't, like, this ain't a black holiday. Like, you just can't do it. I think that's lazy. It's reductive, but I get it. I get the impulse because of so much pain associated with with our role in this country, right? Both of my parents survived apartheid, right? We don't even talk about black survivorship in a way that would underscore how brutal it was to be black in this country in my parents' lifetime, let alone we can acknowledge the brutality, the genocidal events that occurred, we could mass murder of indigenous folk, land theft, exploitation of black labor, torture. We could talk about all those things, but also let's talk about how there are some people who join certain causes. There are black people, black communities, people who joined wars with the expectation that there will be liberty on the other side, that there will be freedom on the other side. And we know that this country has continuously balked when it came time to giving us what they owed us, giving us what they promised. You said, you talk about what men were entitled to in our founding documents, yet it didn't extend to black people at all, right? So we can definitely talk about how this country has never fulfilled its promise to black and brown people. Definitely never. It shouldn't even, it completely disregards the indigenous history here as well. But we also need to talk. I know I'm saying the same thing over and over again, but I just had to make it very clear. Thank you, Whiskey Neat. Thank you. All right, so I'm just gonna hop into. I put again, y'all. Streaming is just like annoying to me lately too. Not streaming, but like the behind the scenes. I tried to tease the video appropriately. I hope it went out right. It probably didn't. But what I was trying to do was name this my annual reminder that July 4th is a black holiday. So I'm going to trot out my most recent video from last year that nails it. I'm going to point you to some other resources that I used to share every July 4th. I'm just tired because I'm not saying I'm doing some big Herculean thing, but I just I've said it once, I've said it twice. Like, how many times can I say it? So I said, you know what? I'll say it while I stream. So I'm going to again remind folks that July 4th is not just a holiday for the Bucker and them. We have an ownership stake in this. We have an ownership stake in this holiday. I just want to also acknowledge I have no makeup on and my face is mad, like shiny, because it's my day off. It's my day off. All right, so I'm gonna play this. This was shout out to Nick Butler. I ain't gonna lie, I ripped this from YouTube, which is whatever. It's social media. I ripped this from YouTube last year. What encouraged me to I found it right on. I think they oh shoot. I think the library, you know, Nick Butler works. He's a historian with the Charleston County Library. I was encouraged to just, Nick Butler has made amazing content, lifting up the history, a lot of history. But of course, my ears are tuned in whenever Nick recounts African American history, Black history here in Charleston. And so Nick had already did a podcast on the Charleston Time Machine about the Tulaloo. Y'all have heard me talk about the Tulaloo. I learned about the Tulaloo in Denmark VC's garden. I'm just going to hold it up to I know it's far away. In Denmark VC's garden. Y'all know this is the holy grail. If you want to talk about history in Charleston, this is a book that centers the Black experience. This is a book that approaches history not from, it's written by white authors, but it approaches it from the perspective of those, like, not from the oppressor. I don't know how I'm trying to say it a little bit better, but it approaches history very thoughtfully and very honestly. And it centers the Black experience, much like how a McLeod plantation centers the Black experience, does not talk about the pageantry of being, you know, in the antebellum South. No, this centers the people. And what I love about Denmark VC's garden, it talks about resistance. And when I tell you that Black folk in Charleston use that holiday as a means of resistance, to poke fun at the institutions, the norms, the laws, the Black codes that existed. Black folks use July 4th to mock these oppressive forces. And there's so many subversive, not a lot, but there are a number of incidences or a number of pieces of history included here that include a subversive response to white supremacy. Like when we talk about how the Calhoun Monument had always been, before its removal, the Calhoun Monument has always been a lightning rod for vandalism by Black people, ridiculed by Black people, right? So much so they had to tear down the original version and make the version that was just removed last summer. They had to make that one impossibly tall. You couldn't get to it because Black people resisted, and that's what July 4th. That's what we saw on July 4th here in this city, and that's what you'll read about in a book like Denmark VC's Garden. So I just really want people to start like don't just go for the easy hanging fruit when it comes to talking about July 4th. Good morning, Crystal, on Facebook. Don't just go for the don't be lazy in your analysis. Let's make sure, and it's okay. Like, you're creating like short form content for TikTok or Instagram. I get it, but July 4th, if you're from Charleston, okay? If you're from Charleston and you're Black, you got Gullah Geechee roots like me, you need to be hella proud of what we did to July 4th, okay? So I'm going to play it and stop talking so much. I talked for like 30 minutes, but I just wanted to set it up right. But here we go. Here we go.
The Charleston County Public Library. I'm here in White Point.
It's Nick Butler. Let me make sure I get every second in.
Hi, this is Nick Butler from the Charleston County Public Library. I'm here in White Point Garden at the southernmost tip of the Charleston Peninsula. You know, it's that park next to the Battery Wall that you see behind me. A lot of people don't know that this park has its own name, and it has since the 1830s. In 1836, the city of Charleston decided to take the real estate where I'm standing right now and turn it into the city's first official public park. So in 1836, when this idea was only on paper, it earned the name White Point Garden. This is an area that, from the earliest days of the settlement in the 1670s, people recognized that just right behind me at low tide was visible a stream of oyster shells and white sand, and that inspired the name White Point. So in 1836, when they're trying to come up with a name for this new public park, White Point Garden seemed the most appropriate name. So the park officially opened in 1838. And I'm here really to talk about the 4th of July.
Come on, Nick.
I'm giving you this information as a prelude to lead up to 4th of July celebrations here. When the park opened, or shortly after the park opened in 1838, the city of Charleston passed an ordinance limiting the hours in which people of color were allowed to visit or not to visit.
Listen to
White
me. These
Point
are the
Garden.
black codes, y'all.
Basically, the enslaved population and free people of color in Charleston were allowed to come to White Point Garden in the morning.
Only in the morning.
The afternoon and evening hours were reserved by law for.
The part of me too wants to point out how many parallels between some of the black codes that existed. And I know some of y'all might say, oh, Tamika, that's a reach. That's a reach to draw any type of connection between the black codes and how black bodies are policed now. It's not a reach, especially when you're talking about the peninsula, because it is the crown jewel of tourism, because it is the business district. A lot of these rules. That's why I tell people that there's no policy, there's no law in Charleston that has not been that doesn't have roots in white supremacy. And when you talk about the policing of black bodies, when it comes to things like the Palmetto Rose crafters, the artisans, the young boys and girls who create the Palmetto Roses out of the palms, when you see how aggressively they were being policed, and they still are, but how aggressively the city sought to police them and to restrict their movement and to confine them to a less lucrative location, you'll understand, well, where does this come from? And it's not a stretch. The vestiges of a lot of these laws, the fact that the people think that this is okay, it has a precedent. You can look at it as precedent, and the precedent were the black codes, and that's not a reach. For you to think that policing just I think happens in a vacuum is 100% wrong. Remember, policing was developed. The modern day policing was its first iterations was developed right here in the Carolina colonies, but right here in South Carolina is where we started things like the slave badges. No other place had slave badges. That was a way to track black people. Black people were property. Charleston saw black people as only property, and that therefore they only existed and lived to produce. And so if you weren't producing, you weren't anything. You definitely weren't human, right? What you were producing or not. And so I know I'm going on a tangent. I'm gonna let Nick rock, but this is Twitch. I get to do this. But it's important to understand that there was the policing of black bodies is because black folk were only meant to be here for one thing. We were Charleston never ever anticipated black people being citizens. That's why our expulsion and our policing, the policing of our bodies, is still pervasive now, because we were never intended to live and thrive here. That sounds harsh, but you show me, prove me wrong. Prove me wrong.
The white community of Charleston.
Hey, Nelson.
And the punishment for black folks visiting White Point Garden from 1838 all the way up to the end of the Civil War was the same punishment as if
good morning, Juanita.
Black people were being caught on
Camilla.
the streets after curfew. There was a nightly curfew in Charleston up until 1865. Basically, if you were caught here
and what happened in
during
1865
the wrong hours,
y'all?
Black folks could be taken to the city jail and kept overnight. And if they were enslaved, their masters would be fined for this crime, as they called it. Immediately after the Civil War, on July 4th, 1865, White Point Garden was the scene of the first African-American celebration of the 4th of July here in the Charleston.
Come on.
The event, attended by thousands of people, was organized and featured African-American people from the local community to celebrate the anniversary of the birth of the United States of America. And that was a big deal in many different ways, not least of all because it was the first real African-American celebration of the holiday, but because it was the only celebration of the 4th of July in Charleston in 1865. Because of the American Civil War, there was no celebration of any kind in the city of Charleston for the 4th of July.
Let's listen to that. So there was no Charleston. Look, think about so this is how butthurt the Confederate, because South Carolina was the first to secede, right? In Civil War. This is how butthurt white Confederates or white folk were here in Charleston in South Carolina. They were so mad that the Union won and the South was defeated. No matter what you hear, the Confederacy was defeated. They were so mad. White folk didn't want to celebrate this country's independence. Check that. So white folk was like, nah, we don't want the July 4th holiday. We don't want it, huh? We don't want to acknowledge, independence because we didn't win the war and we didn't get to succeed. We didn't get to secede from the Union. We don't want to celebrate July 4th. But who picked that up and ran with it? Who picked it up and ran with it? We did. Oh, you don't want, that's cool. Because after the Civil War, we're going to celebrate our independence, right? So when we think of July 4th, don't think 1776. Now, so in terms of if you're rejecting 1776 July 4th, I'm with you 100%. Kinda. Not 100%. No. I'm with you a little bit because we're going to get into the American Revolution after this. I kind of get you. If you're not really feeling 1776 July 4th, And believe me, I'm a girl. I lived like 2 seconds from Valley Forge. I lived in Montgomery County and Philadelphia County. I'm surrounded by all of that, right? All of that. Bunker Hill, all that other stuff. But anyway, if you're not feeling 1776, I feel you. I get you. But you better be feeling July 4th, White Point Garden, led by black people, if that makes any sense.
In 1861, 62, 63, or 64. Of course, that was the time when the state of South Carolina, as part of the Confederacy, was at war against the United States of America.
Against the United States.
The 4th of July.
Sound familiar? January 6th?
Immediately after the end of the war, the African-American community of Charleston adopted the 4th of July as one of the most important dates on the calendar. So emancipation.
Ding, 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 ding. So what we not going to do, boys and girls, men and women, them and days, right? What we not going to do is we're going to stop saying July 4th has nothing to do with black people. If you're from Charleston, if you're Gullah Geechee, we got a lot to celebrate. Good morning, Saint Facade. Justin, you said you do love this nugget juxtaposed with the holiday. It looks like what it looks like today, right? Right. Because Justin, they came back for it after we made it poppin', Justin. Like with rock and roll, like with jazz, we made it poppin'. And they were like, oh, wait. We like this July 4th thing. And now also too that white lash of taking back the holiday to only lift up white patriots and white contributions to certain military history, that's all about erasure. So once black people started centering themselves in their emancipation story, their freedom from human bondage, especially during Reconstruction, when black folks started doing that, there's a white lash. Oh no. We're gonna take that back. Right? That's what I'm saying, that from the perspective of the Buckra, right? We're gonna take it back. But yeah, it's real interesting history. We're gonna keep it letting rock. Go ahead, Nick.
Emancipation Day.
Go ahead,
on
Nick.
January 1st, celebrating freedom from slavery, and July 4th, celebrating the American liberties that our Constitution guarantees. So just imagine coming to a 4th of July celebration here in White Point Garden in the years after the Civil War. You would have seen thousands of people. You would have seen lemonade and ice cream vendors.
Come on,
you would have seen
thousands
groups of people listening to and playing music.
The banjo.
People dancing.
Yes.
In fact, the big
Shout out
dance
Paul
hit
Bowers.
of 1876 was a new tune called the Toolaloo.
Okay, here,
and
listen on.
Unfortunately, the music of the Toolaloo has not survived, and the dance steps themselves haven't survived. But it was a ring dance, the newspapers of that era tell us. And in fact, the newspapers have
So if the newspapers of that era, which is another, that's another hack, y'all. If y'all really want to know the history, if it's erased from the books, go to the newspapers. You literally can see, in historic black newspapers, there are about a dozen that have been digitized in South Carolina. Shout out to the University of South Carolina. They've digitized, I think, about a dozen. But if you go to your public library, you might be able to access another cache of historical black newspapers from around this era that show you, especially the ones, the Afro Citizen is from Charleston, the Lighthouse and Informer, shout out John H. McCrae and Jessica Simpkins, right? So there are newspapers that would document some of this what was going on here in Charleston. You can't always Google it. You're gonna have to go a little deeper. Gonna have to go a little Library of Congress or university library level, or you're gonna have to like JSTOR or whatever. But dig a little deeper and you'll find the true history behind this holiday and behind what happened around this holiday. But it's very important for you to this is just super important. We can't just dismiss this holiday. It's nah.
have perpetuated a few of the verses of the...
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm gonna go off on a tangent, but the Tulaloo is really this is my jam. My dream is to bring the Tulaloo back to White Point Garden. That's a huge endeavor if that ever happened. But my dream would be to bring the Tulaloo back to White Point Garden. I'm gonna rewind Nick a little bit. I'm gonna rewind him a little bit because I think I talked over some things, but let's just go right here.
The big dance hit of 1876 was a new tune called the Tulaloo.
I see you, Kia.
Unfortunately, the music of the Tulaloo has not survived, and the dance steps themselves haven't survived. But it was a ring dance, the newspapers of that era tell us. And in fact, the newspapers have perpetuated a few of the verses of the Tulaloo. So if you look at podcast number 72
That's the good
of the
one.
Charleston Time Machine, you can see a couple of verses of the Tulaloo, and you can listen to me trying to approximate what that might have sounded like in the 1870s. The Tulaloo was the big hit of 1876, and only a few years later, the city of Charleston once again moved to not necessarily prohibit, but to discourage African Americans from coming to White Point Garden to celebrate.
I want to pause that a little bit right there because Nick is being a very, very responsible historian here. But what you permit is what you promote, right? So the opposite works too. If you're not explicitly prohibiting Black people, but creating a bevy of laws that restrict the Tulaloo from happening again, that in effect is prohibiting Black people. It doesn't have to be an explicit law. We know what that looks like. We know what it feels like to be squeezed out of something, right? And we remember what I constantly tell y'all. We have to start identifying representational violence. So that's like violence that's not just fist to face, violence that doesn't like include or involve bodily harm, but the violence in terms of laws that are enacted that have a certain effect, that have some sort of ramification that will restrict Black movement, that would hinder Black people's ability to earn a living, right? They didn't expel Black people out of Back to Green. They just took their homes and made them housing projects and enter Black people into a cycle of poverty, and then brought a landfill into their backyard. So did they push Black people out explicitly? No. Was there an expulsion law? Like say, hey, we got to get all the Black people out of Back to Green? No. But what did they do? They enacted policies that would eventually push people out or kill people. Right? Environmental racism. You put a dump in somebody's backyard, somebody's health is not going to be that great. Right? You take them out of the homes that they own and put them into housing projects that you refuse to maintain and update. Your health is not going to be that great. Right? So that's harm. That's violence. So I just want to push back. I know what Nick is doing. He's being very responsible, saying, well, it didn't prohibit. You did. You did. The whole point was to not have Black people turn up at White Point Garden ever again. Not in those numbers. Not in thousands and thousands of that. You're talking about people from other states, y'all. You're talking about people from Georgia, North Carolina. You're talking about people coming from all over to celebrate July 4th in Charleston. Black people selling copies of the Emancipation Proclamation, making up a dance called a Tulaloo where they making fun of white folks and they dances that they had to not staff because they were exploited. The many festivities that Black people had to work. They saw all of that, how white folks celebrated, and they made fun of it, and they made a dance called a Tulaloo, making fun of those waltzes and all those other curtsies and dances. Like, that's amazing. That's radical. You think Charleston want to see that every year? Nah, no white folks didn't want to see that. They were already mad because they lost the Civil War.
4th of July.
You mad because you lost the Civil War, and you see all these free Black people out here selling lemonade, having fun? I always say this was Afro-punk before Afro-punk. It was. Think about how salty you'd be. and you in the minority, white folks, and you in the numerical minority, Black folks is outnumbering you. Like, oh yeah, you be mad salty. Then you come up with all these laws and you start calling Black women whores and all that other stuff. Like, literally, it's in the history books or it's in the newspapers. In some history books, some.
So in the spring of 1881, City Council of Charleston passed
Charleston, South Carolina,
prohibiting festive activities.
I'm sorry, I didn't even read. I'm sorry for not reading your question earlier.
political speeches.
Shut up,
and
Justin.
Political speeches had always been a feature of the 4th of July celebration.
And it wasn't the first Freaknik. It wasn't. Good try, buddy. It wasn't. Freaknik kind of got a little wild. This was different. It was. I like comparing it to Afropunk. Freaknik is, look at you.
Celebrations here, not at this bandstand, which was erected in 1905, but in an earlier bandstand.
Shout out Freaknik, though.
A member of the black community would stand here and read aloud the Declaration of Independence on the 4th of July to the gathered masses. But all of that ended with the celebration of 1880. In 1881, the black community was barred from having their large celebration here. So they moved to other parks within the city. And the city
just kept pushing them out.
Eventually pushed them out of other parks and even off the peninsula by the early 20th century.
Sound familiar?
So when you're thinking about celebrating the 4th of July, we hope that you will think about White Point Garden and remember its long and varied history. Yes, it's a beautiful park and a beautiful place to visit, but it's an important part of the story of African American freedoms in the city of Charleston. So thanks for joining me. I'm Nick Butler with the Charleston Time Machine at the Charleston County Public Library. I'll see you.
All right, so yeah, shout out, what is it, Mr. Fireman 07. We're talking about how July 4th in Charleston, South Carolina is a black holiday. And we're trying to push back on the narrative that's largely taken hold on social media. This narrative that, oh, July 4th only means something to white folks. And that's not true, especially if you are a Gullah Geechee descendant like myself, especially if you are black and you have any ties to the state or to the city. You have something to be proud of. Because white folk were very disappointed with the outcome, because folks who are invested in the Confederacy were very disappointed with the outcome of the Civil War, they did not celebrate American independence. Black people took up that mantle following after 1865 and turned it into an amazing festival that was held annually called at White Point Garden, and they did a thing called the Tulaloo, right? They celebrated and they created a lot of festivities, had a lot of vendors. And the funny thing too, if you read Denmark Vesey's Garden, white people hated seeing scores and scores of black people come and celebrate their emancipation, their freedom, their July 4th. They were so mad, right? But you know what white folks, how white supremacy works, right? How white supremacy works is that, we still gonna commodify this. So they were still out there. They were out there selling their Emancipation Proclamation copies. They were out there selling their buttons and pins. Oh yeah, they made coin. The same people who hated and who was hating from outside the club. They would sit up in their house hating from outside the club, right? All right, you mad because you can't get in. So there have been folks looking like, look at them black folks having fun. Look at those black folk, those free black people. I remember back in the day, I remember the good old days where they would just, we would string them up, man. Like they were literally hating from their house, but yet some of them would hate and still go down there and commodify black joy by selling their wares. Does that sound familiar? Like, oh yeah, we hate the fact that you're out here, but we can't ignore the fact that there's thousands of y'all out here. It's like 10,000 of y'all out here. And y'all brought money because y'all buying all this lemonade, y'all buying fish, y'all buying all this other stuff. Oh, well, if you got coin, I'm going to get me some of that. So that's the irony too. And we still see those type of ironies exist here in Charleston in terms of how folks tend to engage with black culture. They only tend to engage with it when it becomes valuable, right? And I'm not going to talk about a certain person, but think about some very prominent black platforms who have now been who have gone got a lot of attention, and see how whiteness kind of engages with it, right? I ain't gonna mention it by name, but when we were sitting up there centering a white man talking about a political food like rice. Think about that commodification of black popularity and black culture and popular black culture. When someone's created such an amazing platform, what do they tend to do? They tend to come in and figure out a foothold in there, how they can factor in there, how they can profit from it, right? Yeah, let me look into the chat over here in Twitch. Y'all lighting it up. We got questions. I don't even know what these questions are. Tons of Karens and Kevins. Kia, hey, and it would be funnier if it didn't result in such restrictive laws that came like black women couldn't wear certain colors. You heard Nick at the beginning of the video. You heard Nick talk about the curfews. Black people could not access White Point Garden in the afternoon times, right, and evening times, right. It would be funny if it didn't result in this like white lash of like, hey, you can't enjoy this space, you can't enjoy it, you can't recreate here, you can't lift up your history here, you can't lift up your culture here, right? It would kind of be funny if it didn't result in such heinous laws, but it was funny to be like, you salty. I'm reading the book like, you mad salty, Mildred. Mildred, go back in that window. But I wanted to read this real quick. Let me see what part I want to read, because I've had this book forever, and it's a signed copy too, and I'm treating it like it's just like one of many copies. I should just go get another copy and just retire this one. But no, this one is getting a workout. Anyway, let me see what part I want to read from Denmark Vesey's Garden. Let me see. Okay, here we go. So we're going to talk about the Tulaloo Festival, okay? We're just going to pick up a little bit, and we're going to kind of pick up a little bit in the middle of what Nick was outlining, all right? Let's see. And they were freedom festivals. That's the phrase I want us to remember. July 4th, we had freedom festivals, right? Celebrating our freedom from bondage, at least from slavery, even though we knew Jim Crow was right around the corner, which is slavery by another name, right? Convict leasing was slavery by another name. They would kidnap black children who were orphans, or kidnap black children in general, and put them and incarcerate them, and then exploit their labor, put them on a chain gang. Sharecropping was slavery by another name, right? So we know that we weren't free, right? We know we're still fighting for black liberation to this day, but there were a host of freedom festivals and celebrations that we need to lift up, especially here in Charleston, where black people were in the majority in terms of how many black people were here. This state was mostly black during the Civil War. Remember, they had laws in place to stop slavery at some points because it was too black in here. There were people really afraid of black people. Like, wait, hold up. We done brought all these black people over here. Wait, they outnumbering us. Hold up, we gotta freeze that, right? All right, let me get back to business. All right, so I'm just gonna pick up somewhere. The rituals of still black men and women who congregated along the Battery and in White Point Garden on the 4th, many of whom had come in from the Sea Islands, found space to perform ring dances from dawn till dusk. In form, the dances resembled the ring shout. Y'all know that, right? That's African. All right. The ring shout, in which enslaved men and women had danced in a circle, stomping their feet, clapping their hands, and singing in a call and response fashion. In substance, these 4th of July rituals drew on a second enslaved tradition, mocking the formal manners and customs of the planter class in a song and dance. Post-bellum ring dances provided Charleston's freed people, that's black people, Charleston's freed people, a dance to poke fun at the elite courtship rituals as they celebrated their emancipation. So this is black folk making fun of those corny white customs. Like, oh, we seen this. We used to have to work these events, y'all. We've been watching this. This is something we can't relate. So we're gonna make fun of it. All right. The rituals also afforded black women, largely excluded from parades, right, and speakers' platform. It provided black women a public role in Charleston's festivals of freedom. In 1876, okay, so if you ain't getting down with 1776, get down with 1876 in Charleston. In 1876, the News and Courier described the Tulaloo, a popular ring song and dance that became a staple later at later commemorations. About 24 participants, evenly split men and women, right, formed a ring into which one of the female dancers would move while the others began to sing and clap. Go hunt your lover, Tulaloo. Go find your lover, Tulaloo. They urged the lady in the center, who eventually chose one man to join her in the ring. All right. While hundreds of revelers danced the Tulaloo in 1876, hundreds more gathered around White Point Garden, right? Gathered around the music stand there to listen to speeches. Among the most well-attended orations that afternoon, this is in 1876, grumbled. So this is what now the News and Courier was hating. And y'all know the News and Courier is the Post and Courier now, right? So the News and Courier started to grumble and wrote this. There was rambling political harangue delivered by Daddy Kane. Shout out Daddy Kane. Y'all know he's a founding father of Mother Emanuel. Y'all also know that you should know that he developed the first trolley system here in Charleston. Huge history. We don't have not one statue erected to Daddy Kane. Not one statue. And this is crazy, right? So the News and Courier, as they reported, they started shitting on Daddy Kane, like, oh, he was out there rambling and whatnot, yada yada yada. Nah, he was doing his thing, but y'all didn't document it. But I'm sure we got it somewhere in our archives. Anyway, many of the addresses delivered as part of the prior 4th of July and Emancipation Day celebrations have been similarly political. So that's the other part I want people to understand, right? The other part I want people to understand is that while it's important for us to reclaim the July 4th holiday and lift up this history that has been largely erased, is because these were very political events. They weren't just about selling fish. So there was amazingly there was very important information being dispensed among the fun, and that's exactly, I think, when you think about Black culture, that's us, right? I think that's just something that goes hand in hand. We have a good time, but we all can. Beverly Jenkins is a romance novelist, a Black romance novelist from Detroit. Beverly Jenkins writes a lot of like these are just like, seriously, like, yes, romance. I read romance. I got the history books, and I love this, right? Especially romance that's based like with historical fiction. So it talks about a lot of the lost Black history. What I love about Beverly Jenkins' books is that it actually puts me on to a lot of things that I never knew, especially like in her author's notes. She'll talk about certain characters that were inspired by real life Black folk. And through one of these books, I can't remember which one it was. I think it was Through the Storm. Them Levesque boys. Shout out to the Levesque family. If you read it, I'm freezing. Am I freezing? How about now? Yeah, restarted. I swear to God, I'm just like, I gotta figure. I don't know what. I don't know. I don't know. I'm back. Thank you for trying. And then like when y'all tell me I'm freezing, I can't see it till like 5 minutes after. Oh man, looks like it kicked me off completely. Kicked me off completely. Okay. Oh, Levesque boys. Good. Okay. I didn't lose too much then. All right. So shout out to y'all who come back. Stream Life, about to be a t-shirt. Stream Life. Thank you. You know what? I don't know what happened there. It just like, whatever. It might have been my fault. I don't know. But anyway, I was talking about Beverly Jenkins novels. And so I was talking about the Levesque brothers, the Levesque family, and the Beverly Jenkins novels. And in the novels, it's romance, but it's historical romance, right? And it only centers Black people. And so one of the stories they told was about how Black folk contributed. Like, I didn't know the Union had a Navy during the Civil War. Didn't know the Union had a Navy. Didn't know England was helping the Confederacy. Didn't know England was helping the Confederacy, and there was all these battles that took place in European areas and whatnot at sea. Didn't know that, and didn't know they were Black Union Navy members. Didn't know that. Did not know that black people were on these vessels that were at sea. Didn't know that. And so it's important. What I was trying to say, like the bigger part of the bigger, I guess, point of this live stream this morning is that black folk have a connection and feature prominently in either the American Revolution, in the Civil War, in ways that are usually not in the Civil War in terms of fighting for the Confederacy. Don't even fall for that. Don't even fall for that myth or that whatever, right? All right. So, but let's watch this video here. Hopefully we won't have any interruptions. Y'all, I be so tired. I don't know what to do sometimes. When I tell you it's so much work goes on behind the scenes to stream, I have to just find some nerd that eats, sleeps, and breathes Twitch, because I don't know why these like hiccups happen. But we back. Let's play this.
Hi, I'm Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and I'm executive producer of Black Patriots on History. Black Patriots is about the efforts.
Did y'all watch this? Because I didn't.
All of the actions of Black Americans that contributed to the success of the Revolutionary War. We would never have been able to win the Revolutionary War if it were not for the contributions of African Americans and Native Americans. And that wasn't always something that was pointed out in the history books that I had to deal with in the 50s and 60s. I think the Revolutionary War period is important because it is the emergence of America. White Americans wanted freedom from the British government. Black Americans wanted freedom from white Americans.
There you go.
And, the ability to live their own lives without having to be enslaved. We all had the same idea of what we wanted, but the form that took depended on what camp that you sat in. Documentary will focus on people like Crispus Attucks, Phyllis Wheatley, James Armstead Lafayette, Mumbet, and other people who made it impossible for us to forget that Black Americans were a significant aspect of the effort that ended up in the creation of the United States of America. You can't ignore that, yet it doesn't get the attention in history books that it should get. And again, we have the rationale that we don't want to make Black people feel too crucial in the effort to establish the United States, because then it really points to the irony of how Black Americans were treated after the Revolutionary War ended.
That part.
I was a history major when I attended UCLA, so I've always been interested in history, and just finding out so many issues and incidents that I should have been taught in.
I think this came on last year.
Our contributions are marginalized.
Justin.
Why is it that if Black people were so crucial in contributing to what makes America great and the establishment of the country, why have they been treated so poorly in all aspects of life? This is a very valid question, and it makes a lot of people uncomfortable. I had to.
It says it's very important that you to hear that part. Like, so if you marginalize folks, right? You marginalize this part of history, then you can't justify how you treat it. Like, if you marginalize these folks' contributions, you can't justify how they were treated after these wars concluded. I thought what he just said was very important to lift up.
Figure out why I was motivated. I was 8 years old when Emmett Till was murdered, and I asked my parents, what was that all about? It was horrible.
Around my dad's
I couldn't
age.
understand it, and my parents really didn't have the words to get into what it was all about. My parents didn't have that. Finally, I was 13 years old, and I read The Fire Next Time, and that enabled me to
must
really
read, y'all. I must read.
Will forever be in debt to James Baldwin for his brilliant and courageous writing. It really enabled me to get a grip on it and proceed to educate myself and figure out how to change things. I wrote it really so that Black kids could understand that this is their country and they need to qualify themselves to make it a better place.
See, and I think that's what I was attempting to do on the first half before the interruption, is to talk about like this is our country. So and we've seen this in history too, this thing where we are so fed up with him, and I get it. Let me switch. No, I'm not gonna switch. I get it. Like, I so understand black folks. I am filled with rage every day. I'm almost embarrassed to admit how angry I am every day because of the injustices I see every day here in Charleston alone, not even to mention what we have access to through national media sources, right? I'm enraged every day. I'm fed up with this country every day. I like to post and engage with content that complicates our relationship or complicates our notions of what this country was supposed to do, or supposed to be, right? Because of the promises they refuse to fulfill when it comes to black people, and because of that we're here on looted land that belongs to indigenous folk, right? Like I'm enraged every day. But one thing I can't do in that rage is forfeit my stake in this country. Does that make sense? Like, I think that people, I said this before in a tweet, like I think a year ago. I walk around Charleston as if it's my birthright. I don't move off the curb when white folks come expect me to jump out the way. I don't lower my head. I take up space when and how I can. Using these platforms is one way that I do that, right? It's because this city is my birthright. My last name is Gadsden, right? We understand that there's a whole Gadsden Wharf, and we understand the Gadsden family, that may be my ancestors who were some of the biggest auctioneers and traffickers of black bodies, in the country at one point, right? Like, I have an entitlement to this country and to this space. And I feel as if we forfeit that out of rage and frustration and anger, justified rage, justified anger, justified frustration. But if we forfeit our ownership stake in search of this utopia that doesn't exist, Africa is not a utopia. That the continent of Africa and its many countries is not a utopia, right? It has been touched by it has been colonized, colonialism. It has been white supremacy is everywhere, and I think we have this tendency to fetishize Africa. Sometimes we have these I'm talking to two black people about black people right now. Sometimes we have this we romanticize Pan-Africanism in a way that to me feels not just, I won't say unhealthy, but it feels incomplete. Like we romanticize Pan-Africanism as if going back to the continent or only identifying with customs from the continent only. When we only do that and we disregard the black culture that we've created here in bondage, these subversive, amazing ways that we survived, not just the Middle Passage, but we survived enslavement. We survived Jim Crow. We survived apartheid, right? I think the fact that we don't lift up our survivorship is part of the problem. But when we continue to try to divorce ourselves from this country's founding, I think we forfeit a stake in the game. And this was something that was made. What I'm about to say, this was a point lifted up by the 1619 Project. I think Nicole Hannah Jones lifted this up, like we should be the most patriotic people because we built this country. We brought our engineer expertise here to make these rice fields that subsequently made white folks billionaires, millionaires, right? We built a lot of white wealth. And not just because we shouldn't just be proud of the labor and what we did. We should be proud of how we factored into history. We should be proud of how we resisted, how we led rebellion, how we created our own everything. And all of that came out of that horrid history that is the enslavement of Africans. And I think that so when we divorce ourselves completely from the founding of this country, we tend to leave a little bit of our ownership stake at the table, and that to me doesn't serve anyone. Does that make sense? Like, it doesn't serve anyone. I'm preaching today. Thanks, Jonick James. Yes. Yeah. You said Emmett Till must be terrifying for young black men. Yeah, that Emmett Till time, just going back up, it was crazy. I can only like, and I'm gonna say, okay, I don't want to get too off on a tangent about my daddy, but that Emmett Till thing really shapes the way, like, my dad, like, he's not anti-interracial relationships, but my dad's got some real gnarly takes on, like, Bill Cosby and stuff like that I don't even talk to my dad about, but it's shaped because of stories like Emmett Till. of how black men were routinely lynched and murdered, off of a great lie, which is that black men were out here raping white women, which is something that has haunted black men in this country forever. It's one of the biggest and most heinous lies this country has told on black men, and it shaped people like my father, who's over 80, shaped his ideas about things like, his ideas on Cosby are very, 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 very out of sync with mine. And I'm only bringing it up because of the Emmett Till experience and other stories like Emmett Till. Emmett Till is just one of the biggest ones we know of a young boy lynched. But George Stinney was killed, was executed because the little boy was like 90 pounds and he supposedly killed 2 white girls, right? So like things like that really inform my dad's politics around who he thinks is guilty, who he thinks is not guilty. But anyway, I don't mean to throw my daddy out there like that. All right, so all right, let me get to another thing I used to trot out. So just to rewind,
See you in the future.
Just to rewind, we watched Nick Butler talk about the history of July 4th to black people here in South Carolina, in Charleston, right? We talked about Tulaloo. We talked about Demarvisi's Garden, the book, and how that history is recounted in that book. You need to go ahead and get it if you don't have it. Another thing, this is written by the authors of Demarvisi's Garden, and I trot this out every year because it holds up. Says when the 4th of July was a black holiday, right? So after the Civil War, African Americans in the South transformed Independence Day into a celebration of their newly won freedom. This is another article I'm going to suggest that y'all read. This is from 2018. I'll blow it up. All right. So again, it's written by the authors for the Atlantic, by the authors of Demarvisi's Garden, right? So this is this is the biggest quote from Frederick Douglass that we should read and we should visit and we should embrace this. So I'm not rejecting this because again, we're trying to talk about this double consciousness that we have to occupy as black people or people of color in this country. We have to do 2 things at once, right? We have to acknowledge our place in this country's history, and also we have to acknowledge our contributions, and that's really tough to do sometimes. But this is a famous Frederick Douglass. This one line. It says, "What to the African American slave is your 4th of July?" Famed black abolitionist and former slave Frederick Douglass posed this question before a large, mostly white crowd in Rochester, New York on July 5th, 1852. It is a day that reveals to him, more than other days of the year, the gross injustice and cruelty to which he is the constant victim. Douglass explains, right? Adding that he felt much the same. I am not included within the pale of this glorious anniversary, right? The 4th of July is yours, not mine. And that's true. We were not included. Black folks were not included. We're not intended to celebrate July 4th, right? But then a little more than a decade later, however, African Americans like Douglass began making the glorious anniversary their own. So that's the part that people don't tell you about. They don't tell you that Douglass, he made that quote, he made that speech, that very important quote and speech, but he also graduated to embracing the holiday, much like many, many, many black people in the country, right? So it's a little more than a decade later, however, African Americans like Douglass began making the glorious anniversary their own. After the end of the Civil War in 1865, the nation's 4 million newly emancipated citizens transformed Independence Day into a celebration of black freedom. The 4th became an almost exclusively African American holiday in the states of the former Confederacy. And see, that's another distinction to make as well, is that if you're not in a state like South Carolina, so black populations probably engaged with the holiday very differently, right? But here in the state that was first to secede, black people was extra, especially after the Civil War, was extra enthusiastic about celebrating their freedom. F your freedom. We're going to talk about our freedom, right? We're going to talk about our emancipation, right? Thank you for the follow. Hey, Barnes. Is it Barnes Emma? Let me see. Barnes Emma, 50. Hey, thank you for the follow. right? So, okay, let me keep going. So I'm gonna read that again. After the end of the Civil War in 1865, the nation's 4 million newly emancipated citizens transformed Independence Day into a celebration of Black freedom. The 4th became an almost exclusive African American holiday in the states of the former Confederacy until white Southerners, after violently reasserting their dominance of the region, snuffed these Black commemorations out. So let's read that sentence again. The 4th became I'm gonna say it one more time. This is the 3rd time I'm reading this one sentence. The 4th became an almost exclusively African American holiday in states of the former Confederacy until white Southerners, after violently reasserting their dominance of the region, snuffed these Black commemorations out, right? So it's really, I want to encourage y'all to read this story from the Atlantic. It holds up so well, right? It holds up so well. And if you're from Charleston, let's not just throw out the July 4th holiday. Let's be a little bit more thoughtful in our recollection of this holiday, in our contributions, especially if you're from Charleston. Chill out with the whole this ain't our holiday thing. I get off my lawn about that. It's just so reductive and so not true. It's so not true. And so I just want to reiterate that. So let me see, there's one more thing I want to share, and then I want to hop off and enjoy my day off and get to some work later on. Also, y'all, please make sure you support, check out, consume content from the Reconstruction era monument. It's really important because they looked up a lot of that Reconstruction history that specifically deals with Black culture. Ooh.
Hi, this is Nick Butler from the...
Jeez, let me close that out. Let me see if I can. Yeah, so make sure you go to Facebook, especially because there's a lot of amazing Facebook content typically. Whoa. All right, it says so it talks about independence. So yesterday they did an Independence Day post here. They talked about Frederick Douglass, right? They talked about by July 4th, 1863, right? They talk about St. Helena Island, y'all. Okay. Robert G. Shaw, Colonel of the 54th Massachusetts. Y'all watch Glory, right? So go and check this out. Make sure you support and read the content. Lean into them books, y'all. Don't just Instagram and TikTok or have y'all thinking that everything's just, everybody got a hot take. And I'm all for hot takes. I got mine. I got my hot takes. But when we completely distance ourselves from all these patriotic holidays, we have a tendency to really throw away a lot of really important history when we completely just do that and don't lift up Black contributions to the holiday. And I guess I'm not saying I would have stopped anything yesterday had I did post, but I really do hope people remember. And shout out to the followers who brought up the old video with me with this enormous zit on my face. Well, I guess I don't care because I shared it again yesterday. But yeah, shout out to the followers on Instagram who started sharing that content again from last year. That's what I hope people do. Man, maybe I don't point people back to that content enough. But I've been posting about our contributions and the Tulaloo forever. I would go out to our Emancipation Day parade, which is lackluster now. It's probably the oldest Emancipation Day parade in the country, but it's so lackluster and it's an afterthought to the city. And I will go out there and talk about the Tulaloo to anybody who would listen. But yeah, so yeah, I just think that it's we can't be reductive. We can't be reductive and just be so spiteful to the point where we erase ourselves from the history books. I think that's all I wanted to say. Thanks for rocking with me. Thanks for coming back. Okay, I'm gonna tell you the truth. I didn't have my Ethernet cord plugged up. I think that's why my stream dropped. I got a little lazy. I didn't stream over the weekend, so sometimes I don't use the Ethernet cord because it gets in the way, and I think that's why my signal dropped. I'm gonna confess that to y'all. I think that's why. So from now on, I'm gonna have y'all help me out. I'm gonna do a ritual. I think I'm literally gonna do that. I'm gonna drop something in the chat, mic check. Y'all make sure, mic check. Can you hear me? Y'all reply. And I'm and then y'all make sure that I have my Ethernet cord up. Y'all make sure that My USB ports are good. Like I need to maybe give y'all some help, give y'all some duties to help me remain accountable so that my live streams don't get interrupted by Mika error, which is the worst. when it's Streamlabs, I can, get mad at Streamlabs. When it's me, I get mad at me. All right. I love y'all. Thank you for watching. Thank you for coming back after the fact. Yeah. Remember, July 4th is not just about white supremacy. We actually have a huge history here in South Carolina that we should be very proud of. All right. Some class jobs. What? Oh, you got me. Thank you, Whiskey Knee. You always got me. Y'all always got me. All right, y'all. Take care. Bye.